Eli, shelo yigamer le'olam, hachol ve'hayam, rishrush shel hamayim, merak hashamayim, tfilat adam, hachol ve'hayam, rishrush shel hamayim, merak hashamayim, tfilat adam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
Welcome all to Central Synagogue's 36th annual Yom HaShoah service, conducted with our friends and partners at St. Peter's Church. I'm Rabbi Ari Lorge. I'm joined tonight by Cantor Julia Cadrain, our Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Peter Rubinstein, and Pastor Derr, the senior pastor at St. Peter's Church. In all of our years of joining in the service together, this is the first time, I believe, when we have not been physically one congregation together. This is an unprecedented way that we've conducted this service, but I know we feel no less connected in purpose and spirit tonight. And we know we are joined by members of our congregations, as well as by people all over the world who are streaming or joining us on Facebook or joining us on the Jewish Broadcasting Service. I was asked last year why this is an interfaith service, and I feel it's worth mentioning that the fact that this is an interfaith service matters, and it matters now greatly. I shared this story once from our bima at Central Synagogue, but tonight I'll share it again to try to explain why, one of the reasons why. My grandfather, Rabbi Ernst Lorge, grew up in Germany. He fled in 1936 after the Nazis rose to power. And after the war, he would speak about his conviction that in Germany, if neighbors had really known one another, not just passed on the street and said a polite hello, but really had bonds that tied them together, history could have been very different. And he used a story to explain that. He explained that when he was growing up in Germany, in his school classroom, each desk had a bench, and each bench held two students who sat side by side. And so he sat with the same boy on the same bench at the same desk day after day, of course, until 1935, when the Nuremberg laws forced him and all other Jewish children from schools. Now, decades later, in 1967, the German government asked him to come back to Germany and teach teachers about the loss of civil rights during that period. And on that trip, he really didn't want to seek out anyone from his past except for that little boy with whom he had shared so many school days. My grandfather at that time had become a rabbi, and it turns out that that young boy who he sat next to had become a Lutheran pastor. And when they met, the pastor said to him, "The first day you were gone, I just thought that you were sick. But as the days wore on and you were nowhere to be found, I began to ask, 'Where is Ernst? Where is Ernst?' And the teachers wouldn't answer me. And so I continued to ask, 'Where is Ernst? Why isn't he here? What's happened?' I asked for days until it became very clear that I was not to ask such questions anymore, and that I was the only one asking." My grandfather was sure that things could have been different, maybe not wholly changed, but different if more people were willing to ask those questions, who were willing to ask and demand answers because their friends had been vanished or banished. But those kinds of relationships are built slowly, and they don't occur haphazardly. We at Central Synagogue are lucky to have friends and neighbors like St. Peter's Church. It's a relationship that has been built over time. We'll hear more about it from our Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Rubinstein, and from our keynote speaker, Pastor Derr. We are so incredibly lucky to have him with us to bring words tonight. And I would say, Pastor Derr, your community's friendship and your leadership have been a marker, especially in this year of rising anti-Semitism and rising hatreds, a marker of hope and of humanity. So tonight, as we do every year on Yom HaShoah, we gather to remember the millions of souls who were murdered, the millions more who were tortured. We gather to rededicate ourselves to combating hate, intolerance, and bigotry in all of its forms. We gather to remind ourselves of the conviction that it's our responsibility to decry the wrongs in our day and in our time, because if we fail at that, we fail at our fundamental task, which is to turn this memory into a form of meaning. Now, our service tonight has an accompanying booklet. Should you wish to follow along with us in the readings and in the music, it can be found on our website, on our live stream page, and on the Facebook Live window as well. We hope you'll download it and join with us. We're going to continue with a responsive reading found on that booklet on page 2, entitled Remembrance. I'll begin, and Cantor Cadrain will lead us in the responsive sections. So let us now enter this moment of memory. A voice is heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping.
Rachel is weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted for them, for they are no more.
Is it nothing to you, all you who pass along the road?
How long, O God, will we be forgotten forever? How long will your face be hidden from us? How long shall the wicked Adonai, how long shall the wicked exult? How long shall they utter insolent speech? How long shall evildoers vaunt themselves? They crush your people, they kill the widow and the stranger, they murder the orphan, thinking, Adonai does not see it. The God of Jacob does not pay heed.
And how many stood aside, mute and callous, forgetting the divine command, you shall not stand idly by while your neighbor bleeds.
For the sin of silence, for the sin of indifference, for the secret complicity of the neutral, for the closing of borders, for the washing of hands, for the crime of indifference, for the crime of silence, for the closing of borders.
And we, who promised to never forget, to not stand by idly, God's first question posed to humanity rings out through time in haunting challenge and accusation.
Where are you?
And our terrible, too true reply.
I was afraid, so I hid myself.
It's always a privilege and a joy to have our Rabbi Emeritus with us.
Thank you, Rabbi Lorge. I believe it was on the occasion of the very first joint service that Pastor Derr and I officiated at together that I addressed him directly with these words. I said, on behalf of all people of faith and of the members of Central Synagogue with whom your church and its members have shared profound and sacred moments, we welcome you to the neighborhood. May you be among us to sow the seeds of righteousness. May you be with us as we together share the challenge of a world in need of repair. May you join your clarion voice to those who speak out for God and for all of God's children. We ask that God be with you as we join hands in creating shared memories about which we will be proud to tell our children. Pastor Derr has done all that and so much more. It is actually difficult for me to introduce him this evening because it is with a heartfelt ache that I think of this as the last of this type of service we will share together. St. Peter's Lutheran Church began this Yom HaShoah service several decades ago. Central Synagogue joined them after this community of Lutherans had independently on their own decided the importance of memory and the need to memorialize the 12 million people, 6 million of whom were Jews, who perished in the Holocaust. Neither Pastor Derr nor I were part of the origin of this joint Yom HaShoah tradition shared through these years by Central Synagogue and St. Peter's Lutheran Church. But I believe that in the spirit of the religious leaders of Pastor Derr's predecessors at St. Peter's Church, Pastor Derr, with amazing grace and moral clarity and courage, continued the commitment that Yom HaShoah should not be the anguish and memorial of Jews alone. Mandy Derr and I have been together in times of both communal and personal pain, loss, and then together as well in moments of celebration and tremendous rejoicing. We know the pain that is in each other's hearts, and we know the love that we each feel. Our relationship, I believe, is beyond friendship. It is more akin to having a brother. It is seamless and wonderful, and so it is difficult to introduce a brother to those of you who may not know him yet. But it is with this belief that I conclude this introduction. There are very few people in my life of whom I would be absolutely, completely certain that they would have my back in the worst of our times when either I personally or my people were under attack. For me, Mandy Derr would be at the very top of that short list. I am that certain of his integrity, of the depth of his soul and of his heart, of his consummate decency and nobility and courage. I would trust him with my life itself. And so I introduce to you this evening this amazing man, this extraordinary leader, and this brother of ours, Pastor Amandus J. Derr.
Thank you, Peter. My dear friend, it's always a joy to be with you, even on a solemn occasion like this. And you and I will never lose the bond we have with each other, no matter what distance or what issues or what troubles come between us. I'm very honored to be with you, and I'm deeply honored by your words. And as you know, I feel exactly the same way about you that you've expressed you feel about me. I know that you would have my back too, and I know that your congregation and my congregation would have each other's backs, as they've proven over the past several years. As the congregants of each of our communities, and you especially, Peter, know, I have always considered our annual Yom HaShoah service to be the second most important liturgy that I take part in. Yom HaShoah 1997 was, in fact, the very first service that I participated in less than 24 hours after I began my service as senior pastor at St. Peter's. It's kind of fitting that it be almost the last as I prepare to leave. In my opinion, only Easter for us and Passover for you are more important to us than this day. In fact, I believe that this day shares two important and essential elements of Easter and Passover. The first element is this, that each is a liturgical response to what we believe to be an act of God's deliverance. None of us would be here had that deliverance not happened. And second, each liturgy calls us to a very specific kind of remembering. Not remembering as recalling a past event or an act, but remembering in the sense of being there, of being present when the deliverance occurred. Your Passover tradition, and I thank you for inviting Carol and I to take part in this year's virtual Passover at Central Synagogue. Your Passover tradition says it best. Why is this night, not why was this night, different from every other night? At Passover, you are there in Mizraim, in Egypt, preparing for deliverance. At every Mass, we are there in the room with Jesus, preparing for his death. And at Yom HaShoah, at least as I understand it, we are there in Russia, in Poland, in Romania, Hungary, and Germany, at Babi Yar, at Treblinka and Dachau, at Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen and Theresienstadt. There as the camps were liberated and the enormity of the Shoah's horror was revealed for all to see. To be there this way evokes several responses from all of us. Immeasurably painful sadness. Mourning for 6 million Jews and 6 million others, victims of inhumanity. Anger at that callous inhumanity. Pride in the courage and resilience of the survivors. Commitment to a safer, stronger, more compassionate Jewish state, Israel. And fervor as we shout out our absolute and binding oath, never again. But for Christians like me, especially Lutheran Christians like me, there is one other lasting effect of this kind of remembering, of being there. It forces us to confront everything that is negative about our own religious history. It forces us to stand before you, even as we join you in saying never again, to stand before you and at the same time ask you for your forgiveness for the wrongs our co-religionists have done throughout our history, culminating in the Shoah's horror. For 23 years, you have allowed me to do just that, to stand before you and to ask you for your forgiveness, for myself, for my parish, for the Lutheran communion throughout the world, and for all Christians. For 23 years, in 100 different ways, you have granted that forgiveness. And as a result, we have worked and worshiped and walked together as the dearest of friends, as sisters and brothers, siblings in faith. I've been participating in Yom HaShoah liturgies for 45 years, 23 with you. And from the very beginning, 45 years ago, I expected that by now, this would be different, almost unnecessary, that we wouldn't need to always remember. And for a brief time in the early years of this century, interrupted only by the horror and the terror of the 9/11 attacks, when I thought that was true. And our attendance at these services showed that. When it felt like anti-Semitism had faded, and maybe even had died. 45 years ago, and especially 23 years ago, I thought this day, Yom HaShoah 2020, would be different. 100 years after the recognition of the Balfour Declaration by the League of Nations, 75 years after the liberation of the camps and the end of the Second World War, over 70 years since the founding of the State of Israel, nearly 50 years after the Yom Kippur War victories, over 40 years since Israel and Egypt implemented the Camp David Accords. Earlier in my life, before my hair was white, I hoped that this particular year, with all these anniversaries and commemorations, would be different. But then came Charlottesville, and then Tree of Life, Pittsburgh, and then the swastika painted on a synagogue in our own safe neighborhood, and then every hate-filled act and word that followed, down to yesterday, and even today as protesters marching in major American cities carrying swastika flags, as if their need for freedom to go out and work was greater than and somehow eclipsed the shame and the horrors that hateful symbol stands for. I'd hoped this year, with all these anniversaries, would be different. And it is, but not the way I hoped. And so our duty to remember and the necessity that we remember together is seemingly greater than ever. And our need to stand together in public solidarity is increasingly urgent and necessary. We have unfinished business to attend to. We are not yet able to refrain from shouting never again, not just in our hearts and with our voices, but with the fullness of our lives and our unwavering commitment to solidarity that must remain at the center of all that we say and do. In these days, never again must always mean for us never alone. For 35 years, St. Peter's, since 1985, St. Peter's Church and Central Synagogue have done this. This is the 36th service, as we heard. And our solidarity has never been stronger. This is not just Mandy's thing or Peter's thing. It is our mutual commitment to one another, a commitment publicly visible in the younger leaders, rabbis and cantors and pastors and children who are with us tonight. I am certain as I leave St. Peter's Church that more than ever, that when the last survivor is gone, when we are gone, you will continue together to remember together, and you will be strong together. That we will continue to teach our children and our children's children and help them also to remember. That we will help them to know why this night is different from every other night, why this night must be different every year than all other nights. That we will do this together and with them. This is my hope, that as we do that, the day will come when it will be different, and the never in our never again will not be a pledge or a hope, but a daily reality, the result of faithful lives lived for the other. As I prepare to leave St. Peter's and Central Synagogue, I want to say thank you to St. Peter's and Central for being together as a sign of hope in a world filled with hopelessness. And thank you for allowing me, my wife, and my family to be a part of all this. We will always be with you on this day. We will always be remembering this day. We will always be here with you, wherever we are. And we will always love and care for the people God called God's own. God bless us all as we remember tonight, as we are there tonight, as we confront the horror, and as we commit ourselves to say and do never again. Thank you.
Pastor Derr, thank you so much for those words, and we are very deeply grateful for your partnership, not just tonight, but over the years, the way that you have been our partner and our spiritual partner at Central is so meaningful to us. We appreciate you, and we are grateful that that partnership will continue on. We turn now to the part of our service that is dedicated to memory and remembrance. And we begin that portion of our service with Psalm 23. Adonai roi lo echsar min hotesh yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenaleini nafshi yeshovev yancheini b'maglei tzedek yancheini b'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki lech megetz al mavet lo irara ki ata imani shivtecha umishantecha heima yenachamuni. Adonai roi lo echsar. Adonai roi lo echsar.
We'll continue reading together the English of Psalm 23, this joint liturgy that we share of memorial. Please join me. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. We continue now with the lighting of our memorial candles. We have with us representatives of the 6th grade class of Central Synagogue who have spent the year studying about the Shoah, about the Holocaust, and thinking about specifically memory and memorial. And so these wonderful representatives will each light a candle to represent the unfathomable millions who have been lost in this dark period of our people's past and of the world's history. And at the same time, each of them, having studied the past, will share a hope that they wish to bring to light in the future. And so we begin with this moment of ceremony and of memorial. And as we light these candles, those of us who have names and people that we wish to remember, we can think of them too.
My name is Stella, and I light this candle with hope for a future of access to quality education for children everywhere.
My name is Gabby, and I light this candle with hope for a future of freedom and equality for all.
My name is Maisie, and I light this candle with hope for a future of equal health rights and medical access for all.
Hi, my name is Orly, and I light this candle with hope for a future of safety and prosperity for everyone.
My name is Andrew, and I light this candle with hope for a future of community.
My name is Ava, and I light this candle with hope for a future of environmental harmony.
Thank you so much to our representatives of our 6th grade class for these beautiful words of hope. We turn now to our memorial prayer, El Male Rachamim, and we rise.
El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bamramim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Uteharim, Kezor Harakia, Mazirim, Et Nishmat Yakireinu, Shehalach Le'olamo, Mahal Harachamim Yasirem, Beseter Kenafav Lolamim, V'yitzror HaChayim, Et Nishmatam, Adonai Hu Nachalatam, Ve'yanuach B'shalom Al Mishkavam, Ve'naman. Amen.
We read together in the English, God, full of compassion, who dwells in the heights, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our dear ones who have entered eternity. O God of mercy, let them find refuge in your eternal presence, and let their souls be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. For you are their inheritance. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. On the following page is Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish. I invite us to continue, if we have a loved one or dear ones that we're thinking of, to hold them close. But I also, on this night especially, as we prepare for Kaddish, think of one of the teachings of Rabbi Rubinstein, who would share, I think, this teaching often when we were traveling with congregants and came upon a Holocaust or a memorial to the Shoah. And memorials in space are good. Memorials like this day and time are good. But he would remind our congregants and us that it's really our lives that are meant to be tribute to the souls of these dear ones who were murdered, and that it's about turning our lives into memorials and into lasting legacies for those who were killed in this period, to live our lives so that their legacy continues. And so as we prepare for these words, we think of the countless individual lives lost, those we knew, those of us who just know of stories. But we think of those names and hold them close as we recite together. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach chirtei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha berichu, ve'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. As we prepare for our service to conclude, before we turn to our closing song, we share words that come from a speech of Elie Wiesel. These were words he shared upon his Nobel Prize lecture in 1986. His was a voice that we miss every day, but especially on days like this. He was called the conscience of humanity, the survivor who continued to bring the events and memories of this period to countless masses all over the world, but who spurred those masses to then turn that memory into action. And so we share his words with all of us tonight. We begin now.
How are we to reconcile our supreme duty towards memory with the need to forget that is essential to life? The survivors wanted to communicate everything to the living: the victims' solitude and sorrow, the tears of mothers driven to madness, the prayers of the doomed beneath a fiery sky.
They needed to tell of the child who, in hiding with his mother, asked softly, very softly, "Can I cry now?" They needed to tell of the sick beggar who in a sealed cattle car began to sing as an offering to his companions, and of the little girl who, hugging her grandmother, whispered, "Don't be afraid. Don't be sorry to die. I'm not." She was 7. That little girl who went to her death without fear, without regret.
Each one of us felt compelled to record every story, every encounter. Each one of us felt compelled to bear witness. Such were the wishes of the dying, the testament of the dead. Since the so-called civilized world had no use for their lives, then let it be inhabited by their deaths.
And then after the war, we reassured ourselves that it would be enough to relate a single night in Treblinka, to tell of the cruelty, the senselessness of murder, and the outrage born out of indifference. It would be said to find the right word and the propitious moment to say it. It would be enough to shake humanity out of its indifference and keep the torturer from torturing ever again. We thought it would be enough to read the world a poem written by a child in the Theresienstadt ghetto to ensure ourselves that no child anywhere would ever again have to endure hunger or fear. It would be enough to describe a death camp selection to prevent the human right to dignity from ever being violated again.
We thought it would be enough to tell of the tidal wave of hatred which broke over the Jewish people for men everywhere to decide once and for all to put an end to hatred of anyone who is different, whether black or white, Jew or Arab, Christian or Muslim, anyone whose orientation differs politically, philosophically, sexually. A naive undertaking? Of course, but not without a certain logic.
If someone had told us in 1945 that in our lifetime, religious wars would rage on virtually every continent, that thousands of children would once again be dying of starvation, we would not have believed it. Or that racism and fanaticism would flourish once again, we would not have believed it. How to explain this defeat of memory?
There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. The Talmud tells us that by saving a single human being, man can save the world. We may be powerless to open all the jails and free all the prisoners, but by declaring our solidarity with one prisoner, we indict all jailers. None of us is in a position to eliminate war, but it is our obligation to denounce it and expose it in all of its hideousness. War leaves no victors, only victims. Mankind needs to remember more than ever. Mankind needs peace more than ever, for our entire planet is in danger of total destruction, a destruction only man can provoke and only man can prevent. Mankind must remember that peace is not God's gift to his creatures. It's our gift to each other. And with that final word of Elie Wiesel's, we pray for peace, knowing that it's in our hands to bring it about.
Ose shalom bimrama, uyase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimrama, uyase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimrama, uyase shalom aleinu. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'yakol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'yakol Yisrael. We believe that peace will come. Ose shalom bimrama, uyase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimrama, uyase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimrama, uyase shalom aleinu. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu. Shalom Aleinu Le'alkol Yisrael.
And may we move forward the days ahead with the words with which we began. May we be among those who sow the seeds of righteousness. May you, O God, be with us as together we share the challenge of a world in need of repair. May we join our clarion voices to those who speak out for God and for all God's children. We ask that you, O God, be with us as when we are able, we join hands and created shared memories about which we will be proud to tell our children. We will remember and tell the stories of our past and find the strength to keep before us a vision of always brighter days. We will steel ourselves and be strong, carrying aloft the banner which has been part of our gathering throughout the ages. Against those who would take life, we will resolve to protect life, to save life, to be grateful for life, ours and theirs whom we now remember. May our memories be strong and lead us to make certain that that which we commemorated this evening will never happen together, as we, as one people, hold hands and promise that we will do our best to make sure it never happens again. And together as one people, we say, Amen.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.